In a small, windswept village nestled between towering mountains and a vast, unforgiving sea, lived a young man named Kale. From his earliest days, Kale was known for his restless spirit. His mind was a tempest, a whirlwind of fleeting thoughts, brilliant ideas that vanished as quickly as they appeared, and anxieties that clung to him like the morning mist. He dreamed of being a great shipwright, of building vessels that could dance with the fiercest waves and explore lands beyond the horizon. Yet, every project he started lay unfinished. His workshop was a graveyard of half-carved holes, abandoned blueprints, and tools gathering dust. The villagers would shake their heads, sighing, "Ah, Kale." A mind full of sails, but no rudder. The source of Kale's torment was his own undisciplined mind. It would promise him the grandest visions in the quiet of the night, only to betray him with 1,000 distractions by the light of day. A passing bird, a distant bell, a forgotten memory, anything was enough to pull him from his work. Frustration gnawed at him, a constant, bitter companion. He felt trapped within his own skull, a prisoner to the chaotic whims of his own thoughts. He saw the quiet determination in the eyes of the village fisherman, the steady hands of the weaver, the patient focus of the farmer, and a deep envy took root in his heart. They possessed a stillness he could only dream of. One evening, after another day lost to procrastination and self-reproach, Kale stood on the cliffs overlooking the churning sea. He watched as the waves, wild and chaotic, crashed against the unyielding rock. The spray felt like a mockery on his face. In his despair, he cried out to the wind, "How can I command my own mind when it is as wild as this ocean?" His voice was swallowed by the roar of the surf, but his cry did not go unheard. An old woman, Elara, who was known in the village for her quiet wisdom and her small, meticulously tended garden, had been walking along the cliff path. She approached him slowly, her face etched with the lines of a life lived with intention. "The ocean cannot be commanded, young one," she said, her voice calm and steady, a stark contrast to the storm around them. "But a ship can be steered. You do not fight the waves, you learn to ride them. Your mind is the same." Kale looked at her, his eyes filled with a desperate hope. "But how?" he pleaded. "My thoughts are a mutinous crew, each one wanting to steer the ship in a different direction." Alara smiled faintly. "Then you must become the captain. Not a tyrant, but a captain. And every captain's training begins not with the sea, but with a single, simple task." She invited him to her garden the next morning at sunrise, promising not answers, but a beginning. The next day, bleary-eyed and skeptical, Kale arrived at Alara's garden. It was a masterpiece of order and harmony. Rows of vegetables grew in perfect alignment. Herbs were arranged in fragrant spirals, and not a single weed dared to show its face. Kale expected a profound lesson, a secret incantation, or a complex mental exercise. Instead, Elara handed him a small, worn trowel. "Your task is this," she said, pointing to a small, unruly patch of dirt at the edge of the garden. "Each morning, you will come here and pull 100 weeds. No more, no less. And as you pull each weed, you will focus only on that weed, its roots, the feel of the soil, the way it gives way. Nothing else." Kale was crestfallen. Weeding. This was the secret to mastering the mind. It seemed absurd, a fool's errand. "But I need to build ships. How will pulling weeds help me build ships?" he protested. Alara's gaze was gentle but firm. "You cannot build a great ship until you learn to place one plank perfectly. You cannot command a fleet of thoughts until you can command one single action. The mind is a muscle. It grows stronger with focused repetition. Now, begin. 100 weeds." Defeated and with a heavy heart, Kale knelt and pulled the first weed. His mind immediately rebelled. It screamed at him about the absurdity of the task. It reminded him of his grand, unfinished blueprints. It tempted him with daydreams of fame and glory. The first few days were agony. Kale's mind fought him at every turn. He would start counting weeds, then get lost in a thought, and have to start over. He would feel a surge of frustration and want to throw the trowel into the sea. He would think about what the other villagers must be saying, laughing at the aspiring shipwright playing in the dirt. Every morning, Elora would be there, not watching him, but tending to her own part of the garden. Her presence a silent, steady anchor. She never offered praise or criticism. She was simply there, embodying the very focus she was trying to teach. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, something began to shift. By the second week, Cale found he could pull 10, then 20 weeds without his mind wandering. He started to notice things he hadn't before. The different textures of the leaves, the surprising strength of some roots, the scent of the damp earth. The act of focusing on one simple, tangible thing began to create a small, quiet space in his mind. It was as if, in the midst of the usual hurricane of his thoughts, he had found a small, calm eye of the storm. He started to look forward to the morning ritual, not for the task itself, but for the fleeting moments of peace it provided. One morning, as he pulled his 99th weed, a brilliant idea for a new keel design flashed into his mind. It was elegant, strong, and revolutionary. In the past, such an idea would have sent him scrambling back to his workshop in a frenzy, only to be distracted and abandon it halfway through. This time, however, something was different. He acknowledged the idea, like a captain noting a change in the wind. He felt a familiar surge of excitement, the urge to drop everything and run. But then, he took a breath. He looked at the last weed. 100, he whispered to himself. He calmly pulled the final weed, placed it on the pile, cleaned his trowel, and stood up. The idea was still there, clear and bright in his mind, but it was no longer a frantic master. It was a destination. He walked back to his workshop, not with manic energy, but with a calm, deliberate purpose. He unrolled a fresh sheet of parchment, picked up his charcoal, and began to draw. When a distracting thought arose to memory of a past failure, the worry of what others would think, he did not fight it or curse it. He simply acknowledged it, like a passing cloud in the sky, and gently returned his focus to the line he was drawing. He had learned in the garden that thoughts were not his enemies. They were just visitors. His job was not to bar the door, but to decide who he would serve tea to. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Cale continued his morning ritual in Alera's garden, the daily practice of pulling 100 weeds, becoming the bedrock of his discipline. In his workshop, the transformation was miraculous. The half-finished hull that had mocked him for years was now taking shape. Planks were measured, cut, and fitted with a precision he had never before possessed. His movements were economical and graceful, his focus unwavering. The villagers, who once pitied him, now stopped by his workshop in They saw not a dreamer, but a creator. They saw a man who had finally become the captain of his own ship. The day his first ship, the Unwavering, was ready to launch, the entire village gathered at the shore. It was a masterpiece, a vessel of both strength and beauty. Elora stood beside Cale, her eyes twinkling with pride. "You see," she said softly, "you did not learn to stop the ocean's roar. You learned to listen to the whisper of your own will above it." As the Unwavering slid gracefully into the water, catching the wind in its sails, Cale felt a profound sense of peace. He had not conquered his mind. He had befriended it. He had not silenced the storm within, but had learned to build a vessel strong enough to sail through it. He understood then that discipline was not about punishment or restriction. It was not about forcing the mind into submission. It was the art of choosing. It was the daily, quiet, and often tedious practice of choosing focus over distraction, action over intention, and the present moment over the chaos of the past and future. It was pulling 100 weeds every single day until you had cultivated a garden within yourself strong enough to weather any storm. And from that garden, you could build anything. You could build a life. You could build a legacy. You could build ships that could touch the horizon.